I have another scary story for you guys. Dustin has shared yet another story with us, and I am so beyond excited to read this, you guys. Dustin, thank you so much for sharing another story with us. And he actually wrote like a little note at the top of this story, so I'm gonna read it really quick. He said, "Hey Courtney, Dustin again. I'm so glad you and your audience are enjoying the stories. I saw in your comments people were asking about me writing a book. So I actually did publish my first story about the kids staying at home sick. It's on Amazon as a short novel style book called Sick Day. But in other news, I may be working on a horror-based novel in Appalachia that involves cryptids. I would love to send you a couple chapters or something if you want to read them, but for now enjoy this more lighthearted, fun story. First of all, please, oh my god, if you would give me the honor of reading about the Appalachia cryptids. I am obsessed with Appalachia. You don't even understand. You don't. You don't. You say this is lighthearted and fun, but I have a feeling it's going to not be because it's you and you scare the living daylights out of me. Amazing that you have a novel already on Amazon. It's called Sick Day. I'm gonna try to find it so I can link it. You truly are so talented, and I wish nothing but the most success for your journey in writing. You're amazing. I also want to preface this by saying I've already read half the story before I'm even filming this intro. I love the story so far. I filmed this in 2 separate days because I lose my voice so easily. And so I knew I wasn't going to be able to read all 4 parts, but I wanted it to be one video. So the first part, I look different. They're filmed in 2 separate days. This story says, I spent the summer at my uncle's ranch in Colorado, and something in the woods knew my name. I will never go back to Colorado. It's not the cold or the isolation or the way the sky looks too big when you're out in the middle of nowhere. It's something else, something I still can't explain without sounding completely unhinged. See, every family has secrets, skeletons in the closet, things whispered behind closed doors. Some are boring affairs, money troubles, estranged cousins who aren't invited to Thanksgiving. Ours is older than that, older than anyone living should remember. And for a long time, I didn't know it was mine to inherit. That summer, I was 16, and my mom had finally had enough. Enough of my silence, the fallout from what happened at school, the cloud that hung over our apartment like a permanent storm warning. So she shipped me off to my Uncle Rick's ranch in Colorado. No phone, no internet, just dial-up in the kitchen that barely connected long enough to load my MySpace page. We didn't talk much on the way to the airport. Mom had the windows cracked and her cigarette was burning down to the filter as she drummed her fingers on the steering wheel in that anxious, rhythmic way she always did when she didn't want to say something out loud. The radio was playing some alt-rock station, Puddle of Mud maybe, but neither of us were listening. I packed your disc, man, she said eventually, eyes on the road. And I bought you a couple new CDs. They're in the side pocket of your duffel. Thanks, I muttered. We passed a green sign that said airport 12 miles. Silence again. Your Uncle Rick's a good guy, she said after a while. And Daniel too. They'll keep you busy, keep your head on straight. A few months out there and maybe you'll come back with a little perspective. Perspective. That was her word of the month. Last month it had been boundaries. I didn't answer, just stared out the window as telephone poles blurred past and the sky turned the color of cigarette ash. She sighed. Dalton, I know things haven't been easy, but this whole mood, this darkness hanging over you, I can't do it anymore. You won't talk to me. You won't talk to anyone. I clenched my jaw. She made it sound like I was a burden, like I'd asked for any of this. You know this isn't a punishment, right? She added quickly. It's just a break for both of us. That was a lie. We both knew it. But I nodded anyway, because it was easier than arguing. She pulled into the drop-off lane at the terminal, put the car in park, and turned to me. Hey. Her voice softened. You'll be okay. You just need a little fresh air, some space. Rick says the ranch is beautiful this time of year. Wide open skies, clean air, quiet. I nodded again and reached for the handle. Dalton. I paused. She didn't finish her thought, just looked at me like she might cry, then forced a smile and said, Call me when you land. I didn't. Rick lived in the kind of place that felt like the edge of the world, somewhere between the Rockies and a vast stretch of forest that looked like it hadn't been touched since the beginning of time. He ran the ranch with his husband, Daniel, and their mother, my grandma, who according to my mom was starting to slip. That was her polite way of saying she didn't always know who or where she was after dark. When I stepped off the tiny connecting flight into the heat haze afternoon, Rick was already waiting outside the terminal in a dusty green pickup that looked like it had survived more than one brush with death. He was leaning against the hood in a weathered flannel, cowboy boots, and jeans faded so light they were almost white. He grinned when he saw me. There he is. Kid looks taller than I remember. I didn't know what to say to that, so I just gave a small wave and climbed into the passenger seat. The truck smelled like sun-baked leather and spearmint gum. Rick talked most of the way about the ranch, about Daniel, about the new colt they had just started training. I nodded where I was supposed to and tried to absorb the vastness of Colorado rolling out around us. No buildings, no sirens, just sky and silence, and the occasional hawk circling overhead like it was looking for something dying. The ranch was beautiful in a lonely, haunting kind of way. Wide open fields bled into dense wood, and the mountains loomed in the distance like silent sceneries. The house itself was big, 2 stories of creaking wood and shadowed windows. The porch sagged in the middle. A rocking chair sat empty, swaying slightly even though there wasn't any wind. Daniel met us at the door. He was clean-shaven, broad-shouldered, and soft-spoken, the kind of guy who smiled with his eyes more than his mouth. "Hey there, kid," he said warmly. "We're glad you're here." Inside, the house smelled like old cedar, dust, and something faintly sweet, like dried lavender or apple wood, the kind of smell you didn't notice right away but stuck to your clothes. Grandma didn't come out to greet me. "She's been having rough evenings," Rick said as I sat down my duffel in the hallway. "Doctor says it's sundowner syndrome, late-day confusion, agitation. Sometimes she sees things, talks to people who aren't there." That night, dinner was quiet. Rick grilled steaks, Daniel made mashed potatoes and corn from the garden, and I mostly just pushed my food around the plate. Grandma sat at the table too, but she didn't say much, just stared off towards the window, eyes glazed and distant, like she was looking at something none of us could see. At one point she whispered something under her breath. I didn't catch it. Rick glanced at her, then at me. "She's okay," he said gently. "Some nights are just harder than others." I nodded. After dinner, Daniel offered to show me where I'd be sleeping. My room was upstairs, small but clean, with a twin bed against the wall and a tall, narrow window that overlooked the field behind the house. A beat-up dresser stood under a poster of some rodeo event from 1994, and a rickety, oscillating fan buzzed in the corner. "No AC," Daniel said, "but the fan helps. Just don't sleep with your windows open." I turned. "Why not?" He hesitated. "Bugs, and sometimes animals come sniffing around." I raised an eyebrow. He smiled, but there was something about it that didn't quite reach his eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. The room was too hot, thick, suffocating air clinging to my skin. I'd kicked off the sheets hours ago, but it didn't help. Sweat stuck to my chest and neck like glue. My shirt was balled up on the chair in the corner, and even without it, my skin felt like it was on fire. Outside, a coyote yipped in the distance, answered by another farther away. The sounds didn't comfort me. I lay there still for a long time, staring at the ceiling, listening to the creaks and the groans of the house as it settled into sleep. Then I heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps just outside my window. Not quick or panicked like an animal, not padded like a stray dog. These were heavy, human. I held my breath. The sound stopped. I swallowed hard and told myself it was nothing, just the old wood shifting, maybe the wind, but my heart, it was already pounding. I sat up slowly, wiped the sweat off my face, and slid out of bed. My throat was dry, like I'd been swallowing sand for hours. Figured a glass of water might help. Something normal, something cold. I padded barefoot down the hallway, the floor cool under my feet, the silence heavy, the shadows stretched long and spinely across the walls, warped by the glow of moonlight bleeding in through the windows. I reached the kitchen and pulled open the fridge. The hum of it was weirdly comforting. I grabbed a glass from the drying rack and started to pour, and something ran past me, fast. A blur, low to the ground. I spun, glass shaking in my hand. It was Grandma. She was moving fast, too fast, darting back and forth through the living room, like she was being chased by something only she could see. Her nightgown billowed as she moved, bare feet slapping against the hardwood floor. Her long white hair swung behind her in tangled strands. I froze. Grandma? She didn't stop. Didn't even look at me, just kept pacing, no, running, in tight, sharp lines like something was driving her forward. I stepped closer. My hand trembled as I reached out. "Grandma, it's me. Are you okay?" She stopped mid-step. Her head snapped towards me. Her mouth opened, lips moving without sound. Her eyes were wide, glassy, and unblinking, like she didn't know me at all. I took one more step. A hand gripped my shoulder. I nearly screamed. "Jesus, Rick," I gasped. heart thudding. He stood behind me, hair messy, eyes heavy with sleep, but his voice was sharp. "Don't touch her while she's like this." She was running," I stammered, like something was, "I know." He moved past me, calm but firm, and gently took Grandma by the arm. "Come on, Ma, let's get you back to bed." She didn't resist, just shuffled with him down the hall like she hadn't been tearing through the room like a wild animal. I stood there, breathing hard, sweat cooling on my skin. I never got my water. But I stepped up to the sink anyway, needing to ground myself. The faucet glinted in the moonlight. I looked up at the window above it and froze. Eyes. They were there, just for a second, in the reflection. 2 pale pinpricks of light, high off the ground, hovering just outside in the dark. And then they were gone. I stumbled backward, heart slamming in my chest. I didn't even check the locks. I just ran down the hallway, past the dark doorways, and into my room. I slammed the door, locked it, and dove under the sheet, which was still damp with sweat. By the time sunlight crept through my bedroom window, the house already smelled like coffee and fried eggs. Somewhere downstairs, a screen door slapped shut and a dog barked once, far off in the fields. I hadn't slept. Not really. Maybe an hour here and there, but most of the night I'd just stared at the ceiling, playing everything over and over in my head. Grandma running like a wind-up doll, the look in her eyes, and those other eyes outside the kitchen window. I didn't want to believe I had seen them, but I had. I pulled on a t-shirt, ran my hand through my hair, and made my way downstairs. Daniel was in the kitchen, flipping pancakes, a towel slung over his shoulder. He gave me a smile that felt automatic. "Mornin', you hungry?" "Yeah, sure," I said, sitting at the table. My voice came out thin. "Rick's already outside," Daniel added. "Storm last night knocked out part of the fence again. Or maybe a buck ran through, hard to tell." I hesitated. I didn't think there was a storm. Daniel shrugged. "One of those dry ones, I guess. Wind, no rain." I stared at him. He didn't blink. After a minute, he slid a plate in front of me. 3 pancakes, golden and steaming. A little pat of butter melting in the middle. It should have smelled good, should have tasted like home, but I had no appetite. "Did you hear anything last night?" I asked carefully. He poured himself coffee and took a seat across from me. "You mean Grandma?" I nodded, but my eyes stayed on my plate. "And anything else?" Daniel sipped his coffee. "Old houses make weird noise." "I saw something," I said, a little more firmly. "Outside the window. Eyes. Too high off the ground to be a coyote or anything like that." He set his cup down with a clink. "You were tired, Dalton. Jet-lagged, overheated, stressed. First night in a strange place. Our brains like to fill in the blanks." I wasn't imagining it. Daniel opened his mouth like he was about to say more, but at that moment, the back door swung open and Rick stepped in, covered in dust and grass seeds, boots muddy and sleeves rolled up. "Morning," he said, grabbing a water bottle from the fridge. "Daniel, the whole east section is leaning. We'll need to restring it before it collapses." "I'm on it." Rick turned to me. "Eat up, Dalton. You're coming too. We've got posts to dig." "Wait," I said, standing. "Can we talk first? About last night?" Rick glanced at Daniel, then back at me. "Sure, but it'll have to wait. Fence isn't going to fix itself." "I saw something out there." He gave a half smile that didn't reach his eyes. "You see all kinds of things out here. Coyotes, deer, raccoons trying to sneak in through the crawl space. Last month, Daniel swore he saw a chupacabra." Daniel rolled his eyes. It was a mangy fox. "Still gave me a heart attack," Rick muttered, then tossed a pair of work gloves onto the table in front of me. "Finish your pancakes, then boots on." Just like that, conversation was over. They didn't believe me. Or worse, they did. And they didn't want me to know the truth. By noon, the sun had clawed its way above the trees, spilling heat down on everything like it had a grudge. We rode out to the edge of the property in Rick's truck, me in the middle, Daniel riding shotgun, both of them sipping lukewarm coffee from thermoses that smelled faintly of bourbon. The cab was quiet, except for the rattling of the tools in the bed and the occasional squawk of country radio fuzzing through the static. The fence line sat at the edge of the woods, where the fields turned wild and the trees leaned in close, like they were eavesdropping. As soon as we parked, I felt it. That same pressure behind my eyes, that prickle in the back of my neck, like I was being watched. "Grab the wire," Rick said, hopping out. Daniel was already walking the line, boots crunching in the dry grass, muttering about loose posts and snapped nails. I followed, carrying a spool of wire and a hammer, trying not to look at the forest, even though every part of me wanted to. It was too quiet. No birds, no wind. Even the bugs seemed to be holding their breath. We worked in silence for a while. I held the post while Rick hammered, the metal ringing loud in the stillness. Daniel worked farther down, tying off the last strand with thick gloves. "Grab me another nail, would ya?" Rick asked, wiping sweat from his brow. I turned toward the toolbox. Snap. The sound came from the woods. Sharp, like a branch breaking under something heavy. I froze. Rick did too. "Probably just a deer," Daniel called over, but his voice had gone flat. All three of us turned towards the tree line. Another sound followed, a slow rustling, then a heavy thud. A footstep. Then another. Something was moving in there, slow, deliberate. And then we saw it, just for a moment. Something stepped between the trees, half shadowed by the undergrowth. Too tall, too narrow, limbs too long. Its shape didn't make sense, like someone had taken the rough outline of a dog and twisted it, stretched it wrong. Its head hung low and it moved like its joints didn't belong to it. It was watching us. Rick raised his rifle without a word and fired. The crack of the shot split the air like a whip. The thing jerked back, unnaturally fast, disappearing into the woods with a motion that was all wrong, like a puppet getting yanked off stage. Rick fired again, but the trees swallowed it whole. "Back in the truck," Daniel said sharply, already moving. We didn't argue. We threw the tools into the bed and climbed in. Rick turned the key with shaking fingers, and the engine sputtered before roaring to life. The tires spat up dirt as we peeled away from the trees. No one spoke. No one had to. But as we sped down the long gravel road back towards the house, my skin crawled. The windows were rolled down, and the hot wind roared in my ears. And then I heard it. A voice. Low. Whispering. From the woods. "Dalton." My blood turned to ice. Not shouted. Not screamed. Called. Like someone knew me. Like someone wanted me to follow. I twisted in my seat and stared out the back window. Nothing. Just trees, just shadows, but something in those shadows knew me, and it wanted me to know it was there. By the time we got back to the house, the sun was starting to dip behind the trees, casting long shadows across the fields. No one talked about what we saw out there. Not the shape, not the sound, not the voice that called my name. Rick went straight to the barn, muttering something about checking the generator. Daniel headed to the cellar to grab canned peaches for dinner like it was just another Tuesday. I stood in the entryway, shoes muddy, shirt stuck to my back with sweat and nerves and heat, trying to pretend my heart wasn't still racing. I needed to get clean. Upstairs, the bathroom was small and old. White tile with hairline cracks, a mirror with a rust-stained edge, and a clawfoot tub with a curtain that barely covered half the space. I peeled off my clothes and stepped in, wincing as the water came on cold, and climbed slowly towards lukewarm. Pressure was terrible. The kind of shower where the water dribbled more than sprayed, but I didn't care. I stood there with my hands braced on the tile and let it wash over me, watching the dirt and sweat swirl down the drain like it might take the fear with it. For a while, the only sound was the hiss of water and the occasional groan of pipes. I closed my eyes. I tried to breathe, tried to forget the voice, tried to not picture the thing in the woods, but then, creak. The floorboard outside the bathroom door. I froze. "Hello?" I called, voice low. No answer. I waited. Nothing. I shook my head, probably the house settling. Everything here made noise. I turned off the water and pulled the curtain aside. I nearly screamed. Grandma was standing in the doorway. Not fully inside the bathroom, just standing there, her silhouette framed by the hallway light behind her. Her nightgown hung limp around her ankles. Her hair was a tangled cloud around her face, and her eyes. They were locked on me. Wide. Empty. Unblinking. "Jesus, Grandma," I gasped, grabbing a towel and yanking it around my waist. My skin went cold. She didn't move, didn't speak, just stared. "Are you okay?" I asked. Still nothing. Then quietly, so softly I almost didn't hear it, she said, "You shouldn't be here." My throat tightened. "What?" She blinked once, slowly. "They don't like strangers," she whispered. "They smell your skin. They know your blood." I backed up against the sink, clutching the towel tighter. "Grandma, they always come for the loud ones first," she said. And then her face changed, just slightly. Her mouth twitched into a smile, like a child telling a secret they weren't supposed to. Then Rick's voice called from downstairs, "Ma, where'd you wander off to?" Grandma turned without another word and disappeared down the hallway. Like she hadn't just stood there saying things that would keep me up for the next 10 years. I stayed frozen for a long time, dripping, trembling, and when I finally moved, it was only to lock the bathroom door behind her. Dinner was quiet. The only sound was the clink of forks on plates and the soft scrape of Grandma's spoon against her bowl. Rick had made chili, thick and spicy, served with cornbread and a cracked bottle of Tabasco on the table. It should have been comforting. Instead, the air felt tight, like everyone was holding something in. Grandma hummed under her breath again, the same broken tune from earlier. She wasn't really eating, just stirring, over and over. Daniel glanced at her but said nothing. I cleared my throat. "So, Grandma ever talk in her sleep?" Rick didn't look up. "Sometimes." "She ever say weird stuff?" Daniel shot me a glance. Rick just kept eating. Like, I don't know, talking about blood or people in trees. The spoon paused mid-air. Grandma let out a soft giggle and went right back to humming. I pressed on. Last night, I saw her running through the living room like she was being chased. And today, after the fence, I swear I heard something call my name from the woods. Rick slammed his spoon down hard enough to rattle the bowl. "We don't talk about it." The words cut the air like a blade. I froze. Daniel looked up sharply. "Rick." "No." Rick's voice was low but sharp. "I told you, we don't talk about it at the table. Not in this house." I stared at him. His hands were clenched. His knuckles were white. "What does that mean?" I asked. "You act like this is normal, like it's been happening for a long time." Rick pushed back from the table. "Because it has, and nothing good ever comes from dragging it into the open." He stood, grabbing his plate, stalking into the kitchen. The faucet turned on, water pounding into the sink. I looked at Daniel, waiting for him to say something, anything, but he just gave me the same tired, unreadable expression, like he had had this conversation 100 times and it always ended the same way. Across the table, Grandma finally spoke. Her voice was soft, dreamy. "They always come back, when the moon is full." I looked at her. She smiled faintly. Her eyes never left the bowl. "They wear the faces of the people you miss most." My blood went cold. Rick reappeared, drying his hands. His voice was flat now, distant. "Dalton, go to bed." "I'm not tired." I said, "Go to bed." I stood, my chair scraping against the floor, and left the kitchen without another word. Behind me, I heard the spoon stirring again, that same slow rhythm, like a clock counting down to something that I didn't understand. That night, I dreamed I was running, barefoot, breath ragged, legs aching, the field stretched out endlessly ahead of me, moonlit and silver, the grass whipping at my legs like tiny knives. Behind me, something moved, something big. I didn't dare look back. I knew if I looked, it would catch me. I ran harder, my legs burned, the wind howled in my ears like it was trying to scream something I couldn't understand. I could hear it now, whatever was behind me, breathing, snorting, laughing. A low, wet, guttural sound. The moon above me started to shift, growing too bright, too large, until it wasn't the moon at all. It was an eye, staring down at me, wide and unblinking, watching. I tripped, fell hard into the dirt, rolled onto my back just in time to see it step from the tall grass. It had my mother's face, but it wasn't her. Its skin shimmered like heat waves, stretching and shifting across its bones. Its arms were too long, its mouth too wide, and its eyes were flat, white, pupilless, hungry. "Dalton," it whispered, and then it lunged. I woke up choking on air. Dirt filled my mouth. I was lying in the grass, outside, naked. The sky above me was still dark, stars wheeling overhead. The house was a distant silhouette, warm light glowing faintly from a downstairs window. My hands were trembling, my legs were scratched and muddy. I didn't remember getting out of bed. I didn't remember anything after closing my eyes. I sat up fast, heart hammering, and scanned the field in every direction. Nothing, just the wind and the distant creak of the barn door swinging open slightly on its hinges. I staggered to my feet. My whole body is covered in goosebumps. I was freezing, confused, terrified. Did I sleepwalk? Did something bring me out here? I didn't want to know. I just wanted to get back inside before someone saw me. I crouched low and crept toward the house, keeping to the shadows, sneaking past the side porch and tiptoeing across the gravel like a criminal. I was almost to the back door when the screen creaked. I froze. Daniel stood there, silhouetted by the light behind him, a mug in his hand. He stared at me for a long second, blinking like he wasn't sure if I was real. "Dalton?" he said. I didn't move. "Why are you—" He didn't finish his sentence, just opened the door wider and said, "Come in," quietly. I stepped past him, ashamed, shivering, unsure of what to say. Daniel didn't ask questions, didn't yell. He just handed me his flannel from the hook by the door and pointed toward the stairs. "Go. Shower, then sleep. We'll talk tomorrow." I climbed the stairs in silence, heart thudding with something worse than fear. By late morning, the ranch had warmed under a pale sun. The sky was cloudless, the kind of day that looked safe. Daniel found me sitting on the back porch steps, still damp from my second shower of the day, his flannel wrapped around me like armor. "Feel up to a riding lesson?" he asked, holding 2 saddles and squinting against the sun. I hesitated, then nodded. Maybe fresh air would help. Maybe pretending yesterday and last night hadn't happened would make it feel less real. We didn't talk much as we walked to the stable. The horses were already brushed and saddled. Daniel handed me the reins to Tess, the dark bay mare. She tossed her head and snorted like she knew I had no idea what I was doing. "She's easy," he said. "Just don't get too handsy with the reins and sit up straight. Confidence matters." Getting on was a little easier this time, and after a few wobbly steps, I started to settle into the rhythm. We moved slowly across the fence line, the wind cool on my face, the only sound the soft clop of the hooves and the distant buzz of cicadas. For a while, we rode in silence. Then Daniel said, "You don't remember anything?" I didn't answer right away. "Bits and pieces," I said finally. "I remember running, dreaming, something was chasing me, and then I woke up in the field." Daniel nodded, his eyes on the trail ahead. "Rick used to sleepwalk when he was your age. Once he ended up 3 miles from the house, standing in his underwear at the edge of a lake. He thought he had a demon in him." "Yeah, but he wasn't naked, alone, in a field full of scratch marks and weird dreams." Daniel smirked faintly. "True." We reached a shady patch where the trail narrowed and the horses slowed. "Do you believe in that stuff?" I asked. "Like spirits, demons, SWs?" He didn't answer at first. He took off his hat and ran a hand through his hair. "I believe people see things," he said. "I believe there are places where things go quiet for a reason, where the land remembers what was done on it." He looked at me. "And I believe if something is real, it doesn't need everyone to believe it to keep going." I didn't know what to say to that. "Look," Daniel continued, turning Tess gently around. "What happened last night, that's between us, yeah?" I looked at him. He wasn't warning me. He was asking. I nodded. "Rick worries," he said. "He's carrying more than you think. And your grandma, well, she's closer to it than any of us. If she starts talking to you again, just listen. Don't argue, don't push. She sees more than we do. Doesn't mean she understands it." I felt my throat tighten. "Do you think something brought me out there?" He didn't look at me. "Let's just say," he said softly, "if something wanted you out there, it was for a good reason." We rode the rest of the way in silence. 2 days after the riding lesson, Rick announced we were going into town. The feed truck was due in, and he needed extra hands to haul bags and stack them in the shop. 25-pound bags, nothing heavier, he said as we climbed into the truck. "Don't overdo it, Dalton. You're here to help, not throw your back out." The drive was almost an hour, winding through 2-lane roads lined with pines that leaned in close, blotting out the sun. Every so often, the trees would break, and I would catch a glimpse of the mountains in the distance, towering and jagged, dusted with the last bits of spring snow. Town wasn't much: a gas station, a post office, a hardware store, and a feed shop that doubled as a general store. A few cars angled into parking spots out front, and a hand-painted sign swinging over the door read, "McKinney's Farm Supply, since 1958. The smell hit me as soon as I stepped inside. Hay, sawdust, and the faint sweetness of grain. Rick headed straight for the counter to talk to the owner, leaving me wandering down the narrow aisles stacked high with buckets, feed bins, work gloves, and boxes of nails. That's when I saw her. She was stocking shelves near the back, her dark hair pulled into a loose braid over one shoulder, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore a faded denim jacket over a band t-shirt I couldn't quite read and had a pencil tucked behind her ear. She glanced up when she noticed me staring. "You lost, city boy?" Heat rose in my cheeks. No, just looking." She smirked like she didn't believe me. "Looking at what?" We don't get many tourists in here unless they're really into chicken feed. I laughed awkwardly. I'm staying at my uncle's ranch for the summer. Which one? Rick Dawson. Her eyebrows lifted a little, but she didn't comment. I'm Leah. My parents own the diner across the street. Dalton, I said. Nice to meet you. Before she could say more, a voice called from the front. Dalton, come give me a hand with these bags. I turned and nearly bumped into a boy about my age, tall and lean with sun-bleached hair and a baseball cap turned backwards. He was carrying 2 feed bags like they weighed nothing. You Rick's nephew? He asked. Yeah. I'm Caleb. My family's place is the next ranch over from yours. Figured I would see you eventually. We carried bags out to the truck together. He talked easily, asking where I was from, what I liked to do, and whether I'd ever ridden a horse before. By the time we finished, he was grinning. You any good with a rifle? He asked. Not really. We'll have to fix that. Rick paid for the feed and loaded the last bags into the truck. Caleb gave me a nod as he walked back towards the shop. Catch you later, he said. I climbed into the passenger seat, trying not to glance too obviously at Leah through the shop window as she scribbled something in a notebook. The ride back to the ranch was quieter than the trip into town, but I couldn't shake the feeling I had just met the 2 people who might make this summer bearable. That night, I dreamed I was in the fields again. Only this time, I wasn't alone. Leah was ahead of me, braid whipping behind her, breath coming fast. Caleb was beside me, his cap gone, his eyes wide with panic. We were all running, our feet pounding on the ground in perfect, terrified rhythm. Something was behind us. I didn't need to see it to know. The air was heavy with the sound of it, wet breaths, claws tearing into the earth, a growl so low it felt like it was vibrating my bones. We didn't speak. We couldn't. Then it was closer. Too close. I heard it before I saw it, a blur in the corner of my vision. Massive. Wrong. A flash of teeth and claws and eyes that burned pale yellow in the dark. Leah screamed. The sound cut off instantly as the thing's claws ripped across her back, a spray of blood catching the moonlight like shattered glass. Caleb's mouth opened, but before he could shout, it hit him too. One long slash from shoulder to hip. He dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. I was frozen. The thing lifted its head and I saw its face clearly for the first time. It was wearing Rick's face. Not perfectly, like it had stolen it and stretched it over something much larger. The skin was loose, too pale, mouth too wide. It started towards me. I turned to run, and then I woke. Only I wasn't in bed. I was standing barefoot on the roof of the house, naked, again. The shingles were rough under my feet, biting into my skin. The night air was cold enough to make my teeth chatter. My breath puffed in white clouds in front of me. For a moment, I didn't move. Then, slowly, I looked towards the tree line. It was there. Far off, but clear under the moonlight, a massive dog-like shape. No, not a dog, not a wolf. Something bigger. Its back was broad and hunched, its head low, its fur dark as the shadows around it. It didn't move, didn't blink. Just watched me. The pale yellow of its eyes glowed faintly against the black of the woods. I couldn't breathe. Then, without a sound, it turned and melted into the trees. I stayed there on the roof until my legs started to shake, until I could feel the edge of the dream still clinging to me like spider webs. I didn't know what was worse, that I was naked again in a place I had no memory of climbing to, or that something out there had been watching me the whole time. Caleb showed up the next afternoon in a beat-up blue pickup with a passenger door painted primer gray. He leaned out the window and grinned. Your uncle said you're free for a while. You up for exploring? I was. Anything was better than sitting in the house with Grandma humming to herself and Rick avoiding eye contact. We cut across the back pasture, following a narrow deer trail that wound through the tall grass and into the trees. Caleb moved like he had been born here, pointing out old fence posts swallowed by moss, trees scarred by lightning strikes, and a rusted tractor that looked like it had been abandoned in another lifetime. After about half an hour, the ground began to slope downward. The air grew cooler, damp, and smelled faintly of stone and wet earth. Caleb pushed through a tangle of brush and stopped in front of a dark opening in the side of a low cliff. This is it, he said, grinning, like a kid about to show off a secret treehouse. The entrance was just wide enough to squeeze through if we ducked. The rock was slick under my hands, and I could hear the faint sound of dripping water from somewhere inside. Ever been in here before? I asked. Once. Didn't go too far. Battery on my flashlight died, and I wasn't about to stumble around in the dark, but You brought yours, right? I pulled the small flashlight from my jacket pocket and clicked it on. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing a tunnel that went back further than I expected. We stepped inside. The deeper we went, the colder it got. Our voices echoed strangely, like the walls were swallowing the sound instead of bouncing it back. The floor was uneven, covered in a fine layer of dirt and broken bits of rock. About 20 feet in, the tunnel opened into a wide chamber. That's when I saw them. Chains. They hung from heavy iron bolts drilled into the walls, rusted and pitted with age. The ends clinked softly when the breeze from outside shifted. Some had shackles still attached, their hinges frozen shut. And beneath them, deep, ragged gouges scored into the stone. Claw marks. Not small, not like an animal trying to dig its way out. They were long and deep, like something strong had been dragged here and tried to tear its way free. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. Jesus, I whispered. What the hell would they have chained up down here? Caleb knelt, running his fingers over one of the gouges. His voice was low when he answered. Something big. Before I could reply, a sound echoed from deeper in the cave. Not a drip, not falling rock. A breath. Slow, heavy, wet. We both froze. Then, without a word, we turned and bolted for the entrance, our footsteps slapping against the stone, the beam of my flashlight bouncing wildly against the walls. We didn't stop running until we were back in the daylight, lungs burning, hearts pounding. Caleb looked back towards the cave mouth. Let's not tell anyone about this, he said. I nodded. But deep down, I knew something had been listening to us in there. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of work, heat, and the slow settling of a routine. Caleb came by the ranch most days, usually with some excuse, helping mend a fence, borrowing tools, showing me which creeks held the best trout. The more we talked, the easier it was to forget the thing in the woods, the chains in the cave, and the yellow eyes that had been haunting my dreams. He was good at filling silences. I didn't have to explain much about my life back home. He just seemed to get it, that I was here because something was broken, and no one was sure how to fix it. Leah was different. I didn't see her every day, but when I did, whether she was working at the feed shop or dropping off eggs from her family's hens, she always made me feel like I had stepped into a brighter part of the world. She had this way of looking right at you when you talked, like you were saying something important, even when you weren't. The three of us started spending time together. An afternoon in town turned into milkshakes at the diner, then an evening at Caleb's place, tossing a football in his backyard until the fireflies came out. It was one of those rare nights when the air felt soft instead of sharp. Leah and I had walked out past the barn, down the dirt path, until the glow of the porch lights were just a faint memory behind us. The field opened up ahead, a black ocean under the sky. Above, the stars were so thick it was hard to tell where one ended and the next began. Leah laid back in the grass without saying a word. After a second, I followed. For a while, neither of us spoke. The night sounds filled the silence. Crickets, the faint rustle of leaves, an occasional soft whicker from the horses in the barn. You don't get skies like this back home, do you? She asked. I shook my head. Too much light. You can barely see a handful of stars in the city. Guess you're lucky then. You get to see them here now. Her voice was quiet, almost shy. It was the first time I'd heard her sound unsure of herself. I like it here, I said. Well, I like you here. She turned her head towards me, and even in the dark I could see the curve of her smile. That's cheesy. Yeah, I know. She didn't answer right away, just kept watching me. And then, in a slow, deliberate motion, she leaned in. Her lips were warm against mine, soft, just a little unsure, like she wasn't sure if I'd pull away. I didn't. When we parted, she laid back in the grass and stared up at the stars again. Don't ruin it by talking, she whispered. So I didn't. Caleb and I had been talking about fishing since my first week here, and finally, one Saturday morning, we made it happen. The river was cold enough to sting my fingers, the air sharp with the smell of wet rock and pine sap. We stood on the bank with our lines in the water, letting the current carry the bait downstream. Caleb was the first to break the silence. You're quieter than usual today. Guess I've got stuff on my mind. He gave me a sidelong look. You gonna tell me about it, or do I have to guess? I hesitated. No one here knew why I'd been sent to Colorado, not even Daniel. I'd been hoping to keep it that way. But something about the way Caleb was looking at me made me feel like I owed him the truth. I got in trouble, I said finally. What kind of trouble? The kind where you almost don't get to come back from it. I reeled my line in slowly. watching the hook glitter in the sunlight. There was this kid at my school. He wouldn't leave me alone, said some things, personal stuff. One day, I just snapped. Hit him. More than once. Caleb's eyebrow lifted slightly, but he didn't say anything. He ended up in the hospital. Mom didn't know what to do with me, so she sent me here. Thought a change of scenery would help. Caleb stared out at the river for a long time before speaking. Guess we've all got stuff we're not proud of. I almost asked him what his was, but the look on his face told me I wouldn't get an answer. Not today. He smirked faintly. Anyway, if you ever feel like hitting someone again, just let me know. There's a guy who owes me $20 and could use a good scare. I laughed. And for a while, the heaviness in my chest eased. For the first time in months, I felt like I belonged somewhere. I should have known it wouldn't last. It started with Grandma. That night, I was in bed when I heard her again. Soft footsteps in the hallway, the shuffle of her nightgown. At first, I thought it was another one of her wandering spells, but when I peeked out the door, she was just standing there in the dark, head tilted back, eyes wide open like she was looking at something on the ceiling. Her lips were moving, but no sound came out. "Grandma?" I whispered. She turned her head towards me in one sharp motion. Her pupils were so dilated that her eyes looked black. When she spoke, it wasn't in her voice. It was low, guttural, like someone was speaking through her. Blood of the firstborn, blood of the last. Before I could ask what that meant, Rick's voice barked from downstairs. "Dalton, leave her be." I stepped back into my room, but when I closed the door, something in me snapped. Maybe it was the fear, or maybe I was tired of feeling like nobody would tell me the truth. I stormed down the stairs. Rick was in the kitchen, leaning over the counter with a glass of whiskey. "What's wrong with her?" I demanded. "She's fine," he said, without looking up. "No, she's not. She's talking like she's possessed. She's fine." Louder now. "Bullshit. You've been lying to me since the day I got here." That got his attention. He slammed the glass down so hard it cracked at the base. "Watch your mouth, boy." Or what? For a second, I thought he was going to hit me. Instead, he grabbed the whiskey bottle and smashed it against the edge of the counter, glass spraying across the floor. Daniel rushed in, shouting, "Hey, enough!" But I was already backing away, heart pounding, the heat in my face turning to something like panic. I turned and bolted for the door. The barn smelled of hay and sweat and something sharp, like iron. The horses were restless, shifting in their stalls, ears flicking at noises that I couldn't hear. Tess was pawing at the ground, nostrils flaring. Without thinking, I grabbed her reins and led her out into the cool night air. "Come on, girl," I whispered. "Let's get the hell out of here." The moon hung low and swollen in the sky, its pale light making the trees look silver and unreal. I swung onto Tess's back and kicked gently, guiding her towards the trail at the back of the pasture. I sent a text message to Caleb asking if he wanted to hang out, then one to Leah. We were half a mile out when I heard the rustle in the brush. Tess froze, her whole body went rigid beneath me. Then the mountain lion leapt. I barely had time to throw my arm up before it hit us, a blur of fur and claws and teeth. Tess reared, screaming, and I was thrown hard into the dirt. My head cracked against something solid, and the world went black. I woke up to the smell of blood. It was everywhere. On my hands, my arms, smeared across my chest. My breathing came fast and shallow, and my vision swam before it focused on the shape in front of me. The mountain lion was dead. Its throat was torn open, the ground beneath it soaked dark. Tess was gone, and my hands, my fingernails, were thick with something under them. Footsteps crunched through the leaves, and I turned to see Rick and Daniel approaching, flashlights cutting through the dark, Tess with them, reins in Daniel's hand, her eyes still rolling white from fear. "Jesus Christ," Daniel muttered when he saw the cat. Rick's eyes went straight to me. "It's starting." "What's starting?" I asked, my voice shaking. "We need to get back to the house," he said. "Now." "I'm not going anywhere until you tell me." "You don't understand," Daniel said, his voice tight. "The moon's almost full. If we don't get home before it crests..." "Before what?" Rick stepped closer. His face was pale. "You've been having blackouts, waking up in places you shouldn't be. It's not sleepwalking. It's the curse." I laughed once, short and sharp, because that's all I could do. "The what?" "Our family's bloodline," Rick said. "It's tainted. Generations back, one of our own crossed the wrong thing, something that wasn't meant to be human, and it marked us. We are lycanthropes, Dalton." "Fucking werewolves?" My mouth went dry. Daniel glanced at the moon over the trees. We have to get Grandma to the cave now. We got back to the house just as Caleb's pickup pulled in. He hopped out, concern etched across his face. You texted me. What's up? Before I could answer, headlights swung across the yard. Leah. You okay? I saw your text. Her words died when Grandma stepped onto the porch. She wasn't humming. She was staring at the moon. Her lips peeled back in a slow, animal snarl. Rick was already moving toward her. Daniel, chains, now. Daniel sprinted for the barn. What the hell is happening? Caleb demanded. Go inside, Rick barked. Then it began. The sound of bones popping, skin stretching, low guttural growls that made the hair on my arms stand on end. Grandma's body twisted, her hands curling into claws, her face elongating, teeth sharpening into something that could tear through bone. Rick followed, his shirt ripped down the back, muscles bulging in ways that didn't look human, his jaw snapping forward as his eyes bled into gold. And then it was my turn. Pain ripped through me, white hot, blinding. My spine arched, my fingernails split and lengthened into black, curved points. My teeth cut into my own tongue. I tried to scream, but what came out was a howl. Inside, Daniel shouted, dragging Caleb and Leah towards the feed room in the barn. The last thing I saw before the change took me completely was their faces, white with terror, as Rick lunged for the door. They made it to the feed room just in time. The lock rattled as something slammed into the door. Once, twice, again. A low rumbling growl rolled through the woods. Caleb was gripping a pitchfork like it was the only thing keeping him alive. Leah was white-knuckled around a hunting knife Daniel had pressed into her hand. Outside, claws scraped the walls. Hooves clattered in panic as the horses in the stalls kicked and screamed. Then silence. Don't trust the silence, Daniel whispered. It didn't last long. A shadow moved past the small window. Golden eyes caught the light. A snout pressed to the glass, fogging it with hot breath. The night became a blur of noise. Growls, snapping jaws, wood splintering under inhuman strength. Every second felt like it might be the one that broke the door. And then, slowly, as the black sky turned gray, the sounds faded. When Daniel finally opened the door, the yard was littered with torn clothing, blood, and the faint, sharp smell of iron. Rick was sitting on the porch steps, human again, head in his hands. Grandma was gone, later found walking the streets of town completely nude and covered in scratches, and I couldn't look at my own hands without seeing claws. In the days after the full moon, things went back to something that looked like normal, at least on the surface. Rick didn't talk about what happened in the barn, and neither did I. Grandma had been moved to the smaller bedroom upstairs where Daniel could keep a closer eye on her. And me? I found myself spending as much time as possible with Caleb and Leah. We didn't talk about the claws, or the chains, or the thing I'd become that night. We just lived. Fishing trips, milkshakes at the diner, sitting in the grass behind the barn, watching the sun set over the mountains. But the summer was ending, and so was my time here. The morning I was supposed to leave, Caleb and Leah came by to see me off. Caleb handed me a battered baseball cap. For when you come back, he said. Leah didn't say anything at first. She just hugged me, tight, like she wasn't sure if she would see me again. When she pulled back, her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Don't forget about us, she said. Not possible, I told her. Rick and Daniel drove me to the airport. The ride was quiet. The hum of the tires and the occasional cough from the AC was the only sound between us. At the gate, Rick shook my hand. You did good, kid, he said. I wasn't sure if he meant the summer, or the moon, or just surviving. Daniel gave me a hug. You've got people here. Don't forget that. I boarded the plane with my carry-on and didn't look back until we were in the air, the mountains shrinking into the jagged shadows below. Mom was waiting at the gate when I landed. She hugged me so tight I almost couldn't breathe, and for the first time in months, I didn't pull away. At home, we sat in the kitchen with mugs of coffee, mine more cream than coffee, and I told her about the summer. Not everything, but enough. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. Then she said, The curse skipped me. I blinked. What? You know, your uncle and I have different dads. Rick's father was, well, he's the one it started with. Passed it to Rick. The gene's still in me somehow, but it's dormant. I can't change. My stomach tightened. So you knew? She nodded slowly. I didn't think it would ever touch you, but after what happened at school when you lost control like that, I thought maybe it was active and I didn't know how to handle it. So you sent me to Rick, I said, my voice flat. I sent you to someone who could teach you what I couldn't, she said. Her eyes were wet, but she held my gaze. I thought he could help you understand it before it destroyed you. I looked down at my hands, flexing my fingers like I was expecting to see claws. Can it be stopped? I asked. She didn't answer right away. Maybe, not by pretending it isn't there. You know, they say family's everything. Our roots, our home, but sometimes those roots grow tangled in shadows we didn't ask for. Trauma isn't just pain, it's a legacy. It's a ghost whispered from one generation to the next. A silent burden stitched into the blood we carry. We inherit scars like heirlooms, handed down in silence. Family's supposed to be where you find safety, but sometimes it's the place where the darkest curses get handed down. Like this damn werewolf blood running through my veins. It's a beast howling inside of me, passed down like a twisted legacy no one asked for. But maybe it's not about fighting the curse. Maybe it's about owning it. Because if you're going to be a monster, then make damn sure it's on your own terms. I am shook to my core, Dustin. Werewolves? That was not even a thought that crossed my mind. Like, never in a million years would have guessed that they were werewolves. I don't know what I was thinking. Honestly, I had no idea. I thought it was just like, oh, spooky, scary, like there's some weird like SW creature and like maybe it got caught at one point and was put down there and escaped and now they can't catch it again. I don't know. Did not expect werewolves. That's insane, but amazing. I loved it. I love all your stories, so it's not shocking that I loved it, but what the fuck? I swear to God, you get me every time. The ending of your stories is always shocking. Dustin, thank you again. Like, I don't know how many times I could thank you, and it's never going to be enough, but thank you so much for sharing yet another story with us. Like I said in the beginning, Dustin does have a short novel out. It's called Sick Day. It's available on Amazon. I'm gonna try to find the link. I'm probably gonna like try to message Dustin to get the link so I can like link it in this video. If you guys want to support him, I'm like so grateful that he shares his stories with us, and I would love to be able to support him in any way that I can. But that is all I have for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. If you guys have any short scary stories that you want to share with me or the community, I will have my subreddit linked down below. If you're going to submit a story, if it's a fictional, no sleep story, please flare it as no sleep so that I know. If it's like a real scary story, like a paranormal story that actually happened to you, whatever, flag it as paranormal. It helps me like differentiate between the two because sometimes I don't know if they're real stories or not. But other than that, I'm gonna go. I love you guys so much. I will see you in the next one. Bye.